It was a very odd request. I mean, no one has ever commissioned a story from me, a piece of fiction, and I don't know if it happens very often these days. Of course, 150 years ago, newspapers published short stories all the time, but it's something that's disappeared. The idea of putting a piece of fiction in the New York Times was a sort of thrilling challenge, but I had no ideas at all. Sort of moped around for a couple of days trying to think of something. Didn't have much time after all. And then just about when I was ready to give up, I looked down at my desk and there were my little Schimmelpenninck cigars in their tin. I was sitting there and I started thinking about the cigars, and little by little, wheels started to turn and I came up with that story.
4 years ago on Christmas Day, I was reading the New York Times and I got to the op-ed pages. I was reading this story called Augie Wren's Christmas Story. All the way through it, I was very amused by it. By the end of it, I was laughing and at the same time very moved by the story. The idea that this man who was Jewish, who has no reason to be spending a Christmas in the projects with a black old woman, together and having a good time, and at the same time he lied and stole something from her. Yet while he's doing that, he did a good deed because he made her happy and that was her last Christmas. Something about that mix of emotions and the irony of it really intrigued me. It's kind of like a typical Christmas story sort of turned on its head a little bit.
The idea of just writing a kind of very maudlin, treacly, conventional Christmas story didn't interest me. So everything gets crossed. I mean, stealing is also a form of giving in the story. Lying is also a form of truth-telling. And I suppose that's what appealed to Wayne about the story, how we got working together in the first place.
I called up Paul Auster after I read the story, and I said, is there some way we can take this story and make it into a 90-minute or 100-minute movie? And he said he wasn't sure he could do it, he would think about it. And over the next month or so, actually, we talked a lot, and he came up with a lot of different ideas.
The great difference between writing a screenplay and any other kind of writing that I've done in my life is that it is finally a collaborative act. And I found it stimulating to get out of my room for once. I've been locked in there for 20 years, really not talking to anyone. And the challenge is to try to respond quickly to what is given to you. The screenplay is one thing, the work you imagine in your head, the thing you put on a piece of paper. But once the actors begin to embody the roles and the characters, the imaginary beings that you've thought up, things change.
These wonderful actors brought real life to the characters that are consistent with some of our preconception, but also made them, more real and different and more interesting in a way, and more complex. All of them.
Oh, they did a number on you. I managed to keep my mouth shut for once in my life. Something to be said for that, right?
I think I've never worked with actors like Bill Hurt and Harvey Keitel and Stockard Channing and Forrest Whitaker.
Okay, here we go.
And action!
He gets down on all fours, looks right into the dead man's face. And he realizes he's looking at his father.
Initially, when we cast William Hurt, we thought, well, he's played, writers, he's intelligent, he's complex, he's very internal, he's not a very, sort of obviously dramatic actor. And I thought that was the concession that both Paul and I had of him. But when he came into rehearsal, we started working together and talking about it, and he brought so much more to the role because he didn't want to play so-called the William Hurt typecast character. He wanted to play the character with a lot more life, a lot more fire, a lot more dimensions to him. He is quiet, internal at times, and at other times he's very temperamental. He's just crazy sometimes, and he's also again, in a different way, a wonderful storyteller, very intellectual storyteller. So in that sense, Bill is also very perfect for the role. And I'm really glad to see this whole other side of Bill Hurt in that there's so much fire in him. In some scenes, his hair is all standing up and he's really angry. He scratches his butt, especially in his own private space. He sort of has this very different side of him that's wonderful.
Oh, I liked it a lot, immensely, right away. It's, what you're always hoping for, and what sometimes happens. You see a script which has a new life in it, and all the characters in it have life. It starts to smoke.
If you can't share your secrets with your friends, then what kind of friend are you?
Harvey Keitel is just a great storyteller. I mean, wonderful, very down-to-earth stories. Actually, if you meet him, sit down with him, he's a natural-born storyteller.
Remember how you once asked me how I started taking pictures? Well, this is a story of how I got my first camera.
And that's really, one of the key requirements for the Augie character. In some sense, he's a better storyteller than Paul, who's the writer and the artist. And at the end of the film, he's the one who gives Paul the gift of a wonderful Christmas story.
Well, there's a wonderful moment Paul wrote that takes place between Augie and the character that works in the store for him, played very well by Jared Harris. Augie says to him,
If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Do you understand what I'm saying? You never know what's going to happen next. And the moment you think you do,
that's when you know that you don't know anything at all. That appealed to me and was a good reason to make this movie.
Oh, God, you're an angel. You know that?
fuck
You're
this
an angel
angel
from
shit.
heaven.
Just cake the dough, Ruby. No balling, okay? Well, I can't stand people who blubber.
She did that scene. It's a very emotional scene where she had to cry and laugh at the same time. But each time she was very precise and yet each time very instinctive and different.
Oh, my God. Oh, my God. God, you're an angel.
Oh, fuck
You're
this
an
angel
angel from
shit. Come on. Just take the dough, Ruby.
I'm
No
sorry.
balling, okay?
I'm sorry.
Well, I
I'm
can't stand people who blubber.
sorry. Oh, God. Oh, God. Oh, God. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
That's a real trick that I really admire actors and actresses that can do that. I mean, she's very well prepared. She knows exactly what she wants to, and yet be able to make it real every time and a little different, in that sense too.
She's a very streamlined human being in every sense. I mean, I really think she almost lives out of the back of that car. But she's got a lot of pride to her and doesn't take any crap. And I find that very attractive.
Are those eyes in your head? Are those two brown spots bulging out of the sockets just marbles? I mean, you've been sitting here all day. How long? How many people you done seen drive up and ask me for gas? Tell me.
Not a one.
Not a one. Not a one.
Forrest is a god of an actor. When I met Forrest the first time in LA to ask him to be in this movie, there was a presence that I just can't describe. He's almost a little bit mythical, and yet he's very real and very down to earth. There's something a little scary about him, and yet at the same time, something that you feel that he can be a father and a friend, and something very human and something very warm about him.
You maintain your concentration during your work in I guess in a lot of different ways actually, but one of the main ways I guess is by knowing what you're feeling, what you're thinking, and putting yourself in that space and having the ability to be able to go back into that and to let the surroundings and everything kind of move you into that space, not to fight the surroundings and also to always, like I say, to know how you feel about the people within the scene, the situation itself. And when you start to go in there, then you're just there, you know, you're just there.
Chico told me to check him out, see if there might be some dough in it for us. Well, I seen him now, and I'm not too impressed.
Ashley Judd is a true raw talent, and tons of it, literally. I think she's still sort of finding her way to sort of discipline herself better, but she's got so much raw talent. It is amazing. In that scene where Felicity confronts, you know, Augie and Ruby, she literally just blows them away.
I don't need your help. I got a man to take care of me, which is more than you can say for yourself, Hawkeye.
It's a really powerful scene, and that's the only scene she's in the movie, but she's just, you won't forget her from that one scene.
It was in January, and I was in LA for a couple of weeks, and I had a very successful 2 weeks there. I got 3 jobs. I don't know if that'll ever happen again. I mean, I basically booked the whole year in 2 weeks. It was nice. I got in my car, and I honked and cursed at everybody between the Peninsula Hotel and the site of the audition. I was already in a very foul humor, and that's how I was helping to prepare myself for the scene. And then I went in and I auditioned, and Wayne called me at home and said, "Gee, that was great. Would you like to do the part?"
What are you gonna do today?
I don't know. Read, think, do some drawings if I get in the mood. But tonight I'm gonna celebrate. That's definite.
Celebrate what?
It's my birthday. I'm 17 years old as of 47 minutes ago. And I think I should celebrate having made it this far.
He actually was supposed to be one of the finalists who came to the audition, but he missed his audition. For some reason, it misconnected with his agent. He never showed up. And then he showed up late when we sort of decided on somebody else. And then we looked at him again. There's something about his eyes. I mean, eyes is truly the window, you know, to your soul. And he has just these great eyes. And he has a spirit about him that's also very Rashid. I mean, the spirit of being sort of quick-witted, a little bit of you know, making fun of people, having a good time, and also at the same time he can be very serious. So that was a good mix that we were looking for, and none of the other sort of Rashids that we looked at had just the right mix or looked young enough to be adolescent enough and all that. So even though he's a little bit older, he had that quality.
I saw an ad in the paper. I called my agent. I said, "Could you submit me for this thing?" He said, "I don't think you're right for it." I asked if he could submit me anyway. 3 weeks later, I asked again. He still hadn't done it. A week later, I said, "If you don't do it, I'm going to do it myself." He called me that night. I submitted you. And then he didn't know what part I was talking about. And so when I got the script, I read it, and he said, "Well, I think it's one of the OTB guys." And that's what they call the guys who hang out with Harvey Keitel. I said, "No, I don't think it's the OTB guys. I think it's the character." And they're like, "No, Harold, I don't think you're right for that." And I kept saying, "Yeah, I think I am." So finally they were like, "Okay, well, we got you an appointment. It's at 12 o'clock. And then I get a call like, "No, it's at 9 o'clock. And then I say, "Oh, okay, I have to be there at 9 o'clock. So I get there at 9 o'clock, and I don't have the scenes, and it's like 4 scenes, and he's crying, and I'm like, "Wait a minute." You know, when I get there, that's what we have to do. And I audition, and that's the first one. So they say, "Okay, come back tomorrow, and you'll work with William Hurt." "No, come back Friday," they say. "You'll work with William Hurt." I'd go to prepare, and I come back Friday, which is a day and a half later. And then I get a call the next day. "Harold, you're supposed to be at your smoke audition." "What are you talking about?" "They changed the call. You're supposed to be there today, not tomorrow." "What are you talking about?" You know, so then it's just like everything that could happen that went wrong. And then finally, like the last day they called me back, I thought it was my last audition. You know, I'm just gonna go in there and do whatever. And I walked in and they're like, "Hey, so you're excited about doing this thing?" I'm like, yeah, whatever. You know, so we talked for an hour. And they said, "No, really, are you excited about doing this thing?" I'm like, "Do you mean I'm really doing it? Like, are you offering me the job?" And they said, "Yeah. Didn't your agent tell you?" "No, he didn't." "Yeah, what do you think we're sitting here talking to you for an hour for? Because you got the job." And that was my introduction to it. Long, hideous story.
They're each so different in their working styles, and each very valid in their own working styles. And I'm also learning, you know, how to direct better, actually, in the sense that I'm not telling an actor a result that I want, but actually trying to get at the heart of the scene and where that character needs to be.
What does Wayne Wang give me as a director? Encouragement, freedom to explore myself as an artist, a safe place to work, and a great deal of knowledge. He's so smart and so artistic and so creative. He shares his creativity with me, the actor, and I feel honored to be there.
I mean, Wayne is very clear and specific about what he's trying to do, but he's really open as well. So a lot of times you're working and you want to try this or try that, and he's like, yeah, let's do that, let's do this. The way he kind of puts the camera there and allows things to move in and out of the frame and allow things to take place, for us to just watch the reality of the moments. There's an underlying truth to what you're looking for, but it can be found in different ways, and he's really open to trying to make that happen.
I think what impresses me most about Wayne that I didn't know, because you don't know somebody who actually worked with him, I think he's brilliant. I think he's a wonderful filmmaker. This I knew from his work, but as a human being, he has the most extraordinary center of energy. He has unbelievable grace with every member of the crew, of the cast that I've observed. When you make a small, little, low-budget movie like this, you really have to have, everyone has to have a certain kind of center out there, because you haven't got a lot of time to waste, for better or worse. And his balance with people, the energy, and how he makes his judgments, decisions, is very extraordinary and unique to him. I mean, I know a lot of people I love working with who are kind of, flamboyant people in various ways, but I find Wayne's sort of serenity at the same time, a serenity combined with a warmth and an ability to communicate, absolutely extraordinary. I don't think I've ever seen that in another human being.
Good take. Yeah. I expect it to be really tough shooting in New York and shooting in Brooklyn. But the crew, first of all, has been really wonderful. We have one of the top crews actually here in New York. And also filming in New York, it's surprising. I mean, compared to San Francisco and LA, we get so much cooperation.
We met with Wayne probably in January of this year. And we liked each other very much, and I liked the screenplay enormously. And one thing we decided on, that a sufficient amount of pre-production time on both of our parts is needed in order to synchronize the visual style with the content of the film. And we proceeded doing it, and I think, is the only way to work, is to not trying to wing it from day to day, but prepare oneself well enough to be able to rely on the game plan and then being able to expand it if the opportunity arises. We had a fairly clear idea what we were after by the time we started working. It took us about 8 weeks to get to that point.
So this is one of the situations in which I changed my mind again and putting Adam in great jeopardy, reshooting a scene, right?
It's a challenge I adore.
I saw a lot of directors of photography when I was preparing the film, and I ended up choosing Adam Hollander, who is a wonderful DP, who shot Midnight Cowboy and most recently Fresh, which is about to come out this fall. I think he has a very, very similar vision in terms of what, how he sees this movie visually. Because one of the things I wanted to do was to be very simple about the visual quality of it, and yet be very rich and bring across the aspects of Brooklyn, the feeling of Brooklyn.
Paul Auster, who wrote the screenplay, knew exactly what he was writing about. He lived there. The rest of us had to pretty much catch up with his vision of it. That resulted in an enormous period of time of scouting locations and seeing the actual places. Some of them were easy to find, some of them weren't. So basically it was anchored in a screenplay, in the idea of Auster's work, and we promised ourselves to fulfill it in the best way we could.
What about you, man? You got a story or something?
Me? I don't have a story, I'm just a kid.
this is a movie dealing with words and what words mean to people, to each other, and how you manipulate words, how you can use words to tell stories, all the different aspects of that. And Paul is such a wonderful, wonderful writer of words and dialogue and storytelling, so might as well make the best use of that.
A character in a film, even though it's a real person or the picture of a real person, is flat. It's two-dimensional. And there's very little room for you to add information because it's all there, given to you. And things are happening so fast, you can't really stop to ponder a passage in a film. It just whips by. I guess afterwards, you think about it, if it's a good film, and you begin to digest it, and maybe, in certain cases, even go back and see the film again. Now, that would be extraordinary.